a look at this wonderfully appetizing breakfast. Usually I refuse to go outside before lunchtime, so I have to resort to eating cereal that I've saved up from previous days. However, I did go to the dining hall to grab some breakfast later on in the week, so you can look forward to that. That North Avenue chicken is pretty good. They usually serve dark meat, so I think we got like a drumstick and a thigh this time. The flavor was alright, a little bit too salty for my taste, but I think my favorite part was probably the kale and broccoli stir fry, because I think they add some like honey and soy sauce, which adds a nice like slightly sweet flavor without being too salty. The rice I would probably give like a 4 out of 10. I thought it was pretty dry and a little bit undercooked. And the corn had some like unnecessary spice, which I wasn't a big fan of. Overall, I think I would give that lunch an 8 out of 10 because it could be worse based on Nav standards, but it could also be improved quite a bit. Okay guys, let me tell you, the chicken that I had tonight for dinner was incredibly spicy. Like, I could barely finish it. Oh my gosh, I had to like drink water between every bite. It was that bad. I honestly couldn't really tell what flavor it was. I could just taste straight spice. Like, every bite was just more pain. And the friend that I was eating with, he had to get another glass of lemonade in order to finish it. The Brussels sprouts were okay. Like, I would say that usually GT doesn't screw up the Brussels sprouts that badly. And there is like a nice roasted flavor that comes along with it. It's like just your usual salt and peppery taste. The macaroni was pretty bland, to be honest. I'm not exactly sure why they had macaroni because it was supposed to be rice. And cauliflower and like the broccoli was okay. There was basically no flavor there either, but it did help to like control the spice a little bit from the chicken. And then as for the ice cream and the brownie, I feel like the ice cream is fairly good. Like, it's slightly better than what you would get at the supermarket. And they do give you, like, a reasonable serving. And there's a bunch of toppings available as well. I just didn't get any that day. And the brownie was pretty subpar. I've definitely made better brownies from the box that have tasted better than the Nav brownies. So I would probably pass on the brownies. The Salisbury steak is about what you would expect. It's a mixture of ground beef and turkey, so the meat flavor is very pronounced. The mushroom gravy was done quite well in my opinion. The savoriness of the gravy kind of brought the entire dish together. The roasted sweet potatoes were definitely a highlight of the dish for me because the texture was very on point. There was some light oil drizzled on it, and I think it was cooked pretty well. The broccoli was in a really large piece, which is something that I don't really appreciate about Nav. They usually don't cut up the broccoli or cauliflower into reasonable bite-sized pieces, so you have to cut it up yourself. And they usually don't have plastic knives anymore at Nav, so that's quite an issue. But I think that they cooked the broccoli slightly better than they normally did. The green beans were also done very well. You could tell that they were relatively fresh because they had a nice crunch, but they were also cooked to a reasonable amount, and the seasoning was done fairly well. Usually Nav veggies are either unnecessarily spicy or like seasoned with salt very heavily, or they have no flavor at all. But I feel like the green beans kind of fell in the middle of the spectrum this time. So overall, I would give the dish an 8.5 out of 10. Everyone was really excited when Umami first came out with the mochi. because it was something different, and we all get 4 meal swipes every day, so it's not like we're gonna use up all of them anyways. Although, I will say that if you're trying to buy the mochi separately, it's definitely not worth it. But if you have an extra meal swipe, I'll recommend that you would go for it. The flavor itself was kind of hit or miss depending on what flavor it was. So I've tried the pineapple, strawberry, mango, and red bean. And out of those options, I think red bean was definitely my favorite because of the texture. Like, as you can see from the clip, there is some red bean paste in there. And it was probably less chewy than the other mochi options. My second favorite would be the mango. I think the flavor is pretty on point and accurate. And then the strawberry and pineapple were kind of tied for last place. The pineapple did not have much flavor at all, and it was pretty hard to chew, and the strawberry tasted very artificial. But overall, I think that Umami did like a decent job with the mochi. It was better than I expected, but definitely could be improved on. I would rate the mochi an 8 out of 10. The steak was cooked well done, so it was too tough. About 5% of the steak contained fat, and that's where the flavor had a better chance of shining through. However, I'll give Nav some bonus points for trying to be healthy. Nothing noteworthy about the veggies or rice. Overall, I give the meal a 9 out of 10, but I may be a bit biased because I am a serious fan of steak. Any steak.
Talk about the breakfast. Honestly, I don't think it's worth it to get up before 9:30 because I have 9:30 classes. But you know, today's my first day getting breakfast this semester, and pancakes hit or miss with the edges. If they're crispy, they're good. If they're not, they're just kind of soggy, sad plop thing. And I don't know, you tell me what you think of this meat. I think it looks like fertilizer for your garden, but yeah, I couldn't eat that, I'm sorry. But, and yeah, this is the parfait. Also wouldn't recommend because it's frozen and probably been sitting out there for a while. That's not good.
The eggs are absolute trash. They are fake scrambled eggs, and the texture is just very mushy and slightly watery. Definitely not my favorite, but I'll still eat them. The tater tots are usually cooked pretty well, very crispy, and they're very consistent. The sausage links are quite good as well. They're about what you would expect from your normal sausage links. They're pretty juicy. I tried the new quesadilla from Chipotle with carnitas. It was very steamy. They pressed it in some type of press for a while, so I had to wait a few minutes, but it was definitely worth the wait. And on the side, I got tomato and corn salsa. I will say though that the quesadilla only comes with 2 sides, so it may not be the most bang for your buck, but it's still a good option. Shout out to Georgia Tech SCPC for the free Chick-fil-A during the Sting Break event on Wednesday. Of course, I don't really have too much additional insight to give about Chick-fil-A. I will say that Chick-fil-A sauce is my favorite, hands down. Every Thursday, Nav serves the exact same fried chicken meal, which gets old really fast. The fried chicken is Pretty average. The chicken was really juicy today, which I did appreciate. The corn muffin is by far the best item on the dish. One time the girl in front of me asked for 2 corn muffins, and I wish I did that too. It's slightly more sweet than you would expect, but the corn flavor is definitely there. And the texture is incredible and very consistent. The collard greens are a bit too salty, however, they are cooked through, and the mac and cheese is far below average. There's not much cheese taste at all. The pasta is cooked for too long, and I wish there was some type of breadcrumb topping. Nav pleasantly surprised us with the Tuscany chicken sandwich with pesto. There was a nice flavor, and the bread seemed even artisanal. The pork looked pretty dry, but actually wasn't terribly dry. I wish there were some toppings that were available to go on top of the potato. The zucchini was completely boiled through, so essentially no flavor at all, and the broccoli was just your usual standard fare. Nav serves the exact same fried fish meal every Friday, so I am well beyond tired of it at this point. The breading is too thick on the fish, so there's not much actual fish in there. I will say that the braised cabbage could be seen as a redeeming factor for the dish. It's unexpectedly savory because of the addition of bacon and onion, and is usually cooked quite consistently.
Again.
Is above average. If you catch it right when it comes out of the oven, that's even better. Surprisingly, the Meat Lover's pizza actually had pieces of meatball on it, which I appreciated. As for the potatoes, they're usually cooked well. If you find some crispy pieces, that's pretty good. The asparagus can be a hit or miss. This time it was a miss because it was cooked for too long. The tiramisu is excellent, it has a great flavor and texture. The salmon at Umami is usually decent. The portion sizes do run kind of small though. The rice is also very variable, it depends on who's cooking it that day. Today it was slightly overcooked, so it was a bit too mushy. The employees tend to be heavy-handed when it comes to the sauce, so usually everything will just be covered in the sauce. The broccoli is steamed, so it's about what you would expect, and the egg roll is consistent and crispy. The sushi runs for 1 meal swipe each, which can be a bit steep. It's comparable to supermarket sushi. The steak was extremely tough at Iron Skillet. Some of the edge pieces were a bit more flavorful than the interior parts. As for the potatoes, they were seasoned pretty heavily, but I think that they tasted pretty good. Slightly too oily though. And then the peas and mushrooms were actually sauteed a little bit, so I enjoyed them. The dessert was definitely my favorite part. It had some coconut bits and had like a pastry-like texture. So I think the dessert was done really well. Chicken tenders are not usually served at Iron Skillet, so everyone was very excited to see them there today. They were really dry though, and were in desperate need of sauce. The mashed potatoes were done pretty well. I liked the texture, and there was also some cheese and bacon on top. The broccolini was in like really large pieces, so I had to cut it up myself. As for the tempura tofu, I thought that was very creative, and actually the tempura batter was pretty thin. Corn muffin was pretty dry, I will say, not as good as the Nave corn muffins, but still pretty edible. And the s'mores brownie was very good. Pretty moist, and also enjoyed the marshmallow pieces. The ramen was a nice deviation from my usual dining hall meals. The noodles were a little bit thin, so I would have appreciated if they were thicker, but the soft-boiled egg was one of the best I've ever had in ramen, so that was incredible. The portion size was a little bit too small though. So that wraps up this video. If you guys enjoyed it, let me know in the comments below, or if you have any suggestions on what types of videos I should make in the future, feel free to drop a comment. I'll see you guys in the next one.